But we'll start with Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas managed to get off the line better than Lewis Hamilton on that first start, took the lead, only for the red flag to cause a second start and then a third start later on in the Grand Prix, both of which Lewis Hamilton held the advantage. Sam, do you think this was a missed opportunity for Bottas? Do you think he should have won this?
How can it not be? I mean, he'll be absolutely kicking himself. He'll think that maybe we should just start playing Dan Tipton's radio messages in Bottas's trailer, because he must feel the same. Those two must be best mates. What have I done in a previous life to deserve such woeful misery? Is what Dan Tipton likes to say, despite earning a lot of money driving fast cars for fun. Valtteri Bottas, bless him, he did everything right pretty much all weekend. He didn't put it on pole, which actually gave him what seemed to be like the better grid spot. He absolutely mullered the start, didn't he? It was bloody perfect. Off the road he went, into the sunset of Tuscany, and he thought, that's it, right, I'm leading around here. And we all said at the start, the guy that leads into turn one is the guy that wins this race, before you know that 2 red flags turn up. Second red flag does come along after what was a very eventful safety car restart, when the back end of the grid decided that they wanted to leave the safety car to get to the front early. Bottas was still warming his tyres up. We had absolute carnage, massive Spa, old school vibes going on there with the field crashing beforehand. And Hamilton finessed it round the outside. It was a brilliant recovery from Lewis Hamilton, got round the outside of Bottas. Fantastic attacking manoeuvre from Lewis. It's great to see him still be able to go wheel to wheel with one of the best drivers on the grid when it comes to fighting, and pulling off such a miraculous move on the same machinery. It was really brilliant. And then the third start of the race, so often you have three restarts, 3 starts in one race, comes along, and it couldn't have gone worse. It's like each one progressively got worse for him. Ricciardo flew past him, nearly possibly got past Hamilton as well. He did well to get back past Ricciardo, of course, a lap or so later. But that was it. That was race over. So that was the race where we're thinking Bottas is going to claw back points. He's managed to get in front of Lewis Hamilton at the start. The one race like Monaco that you need to do it, he did it, and it all just fell apart for him. And I had to take my hat off for Lewis Hamilton for recovering, for getting better with each start, for holding on with each start. The cards really weren't with Bottas today, and I can say there was some bad luck, but also he was also outdriven by his teammate again. So, yeah, gutting, unfairly so a little bit, but that is the way the cards are dealt.
What do you reckon, Harry? Do you think this was a missed opportunity for him?
Yeah, I mean, he, as Sam said, he's going to have a bit of Dan Tipton vibes about him, feeling a bit hard done by. No, I'm not.
It's actually Richard, I believe, is his name.
His full name. Yeah, he's gonna. I think he will a little bit, because 2 out of the 3 starts he nailed. He nailed the first one to get by Hamilton. He nailed the second one, but was still mugged by Hamilton into T1 just because of how powerful that slipstream is. And then obviously the third one, he fluffed it up. And yeah, in an ordinary race, which that obviously wasn't. After that first start, we might have said that's kind of game over, because I think on pace they were relatively close. Obviously, Hamilton managed to look after his tyres better in the first stint, but then he didn't have the dirty air of himself to contend with. So, yeah, it's another miss one, and you could tell on that lap when Hamilton banged in that fastest lap on the penultimate lap, and just Bottas slipped back by about 4 seconds. Then, because I think he knew it was game over, and it must really hurt having to get up every morning and be beaten by Lewis Hamilton at the moment. I mean, fair play for him to keep turning up every week and giving it a good go. And he's just kind of on the wrong side. He's so close, but he's on the wrong side. And it got unlucky yesterday in quali, because he could well have taken pole there. Then he just couldn't get close enough. But yeah, he's on the wrong side, but then it just, he's got to be that tiny bit quicker and tiny bit more. I thought on that second restart, he could have maybe fought Hamilton a bit more. I know it was difficult because on cold tyres, but he did have the track position going as turn 1. But yeah, he's going to rue it. And, if it wasn't already, that championship is done and dusted now, quite frankly.
Yeah, I feel like Valtteri Bottas, and it's a fine line between misfortune and not being good enough, and where he lies in terms of different incidents is generally speaking, down to personal opinion. We've discussed the starts a lot this year and how Valtteri Bottas constantly seems to make good starts at the wrong races and makes bad starts at the wrong races. He had an awful start at the Circuit de Catalunya, which is a race where you absolutely need a great start. Whereas Silverstone, where you don't have much of an opportunity going into turn one, he got a great start there. And he didn't have enough of a run to capitalise. And he must have just been hoping, I need a good start at a race where I can capitalise. And he got it. He got it here. You've got enough of a run down into turn one, as Bottas and Hamilton both proved, that if you do get a good start, or even if you get the same start as the guy in front of you, it gives you an opportunity. And Bottas finally nails it. You think, everything's coming up Bottas for once, only for then his own. The ironic thing is, I think he did a very good job on that safety car restart. But the problem is he did such a good job that it caused the crash, which essentially gave Hamilton the chance to get him again on the standing restart. So it's all right if you spin out or you make an error and your teammate gets past you as a result of that. Fair enough. He has to contend with the fact that he did something pretty good, and that was the reason his teammate got past. So that's pretty demoralising. And yeah, I mean, it came up for him again. He needed a safety car. He got one. The racing gods shone down on him for once, and he couldn't take advantage of it. So, at that point, you have to say, well, he was given the opportunity and he couldn't take it. And this is a race weekend where Bottas absolutely should have taken the race victory. He was the quicker car of the two, in my opinion. He led every practice session. He couldn't quite, qualifying didn't go his way. And it just proves that you need to be on it in both of those runs in Q3, because that sort of thing can happen to Valtteri Bottas, as did. And he nailed the race start, and he couldn't, as a way that he couldn't do it. And that stint, like you say, Harry, the tyre wear wasn't quite the same. The dirty air was probably a massive part to play in that, but. Bottas, you just feel as if the stars just aren't aligning for him this year. And it's a mixture of that and also him not being able to take the opportunities when they come. It's very difficult to determine what belongs in which category. But yeah, this is a race he should have won. And unfortunately for him, this is why Lewis Hamilton is the champion that he is that he can win on race weekends where he probably shouldn't be winning. And Bottas can't seem to do the reverse.
I mean, put it into context this way. Lewis Hamilton came away with the championship last season. Hamilton has already had more pole positions this year and we're only halfway through the season. And Hamilton has now won 7 of 9 races. I mean, Hamilton is continually getting better and Bottas is matching him. I think if Bottas, like you said, the stars are lying a little bit more, Bottas could be a machine if he just gets his head down. But every week now, he's getting out of that car after each session and being more and more and more frustrated. I think it's just becoming a bit of a snowball of anger, which is now just rolling endlessly towards the end of the season. And I reckon one more race and you can close the book on this.
And ultimately, Hamilton hasn't overtaken Bottas this year. I think that's probably the most confusing thing and the most frustrating thing for Bottas is that if you look at, say, Albon versus Verstappen, it's very clear that Albon isn't on the pace of Verstappen by a few tenths per lap, and you can work to minimise that. I think Bottas has a case to say that there really isn't, in terms of pace, much between the two drivers. It's just this race management aspect that Bottas hasn't got nailed down to the same level that Hamilton has. When Bottas has led a race, he's continued to lead the race. And unless things happen out of his control, he's been able to maintain it. And it does seem as if whichever Mercedes leads is the one that will stay leading. And there isn't a lot of reversing between those two positions, but a few hundredths of a second in qualifying as continues to be the case, and this red flag that we had in Mugello, it just seems like incidents like that are keeping Bottas behind Hamilton. And to a degree, if you've got 4 or 5 attempts that you need to find up, it's probably much easier to work on that and to know what you need to do to minimise it. But when it is so close, as is the case with Bottas and Hamilton, it's tough to know what to do.
Can we also talk about what I actually feel was very unlucky for Bottas, just pure bad luck, was that when he came into the pits at the right time, I believe this was before the second red flag, he was right at the pit entry as the safety car was announced, and then it turned into the red flag. got those tyres on, came out, and the safety car was already waiting at the end of the pit lane, but Bottas was second. So Bottas had to spend half a lap behind the safety car, going safety car pace, and was then released, while Hamilton was driving around at normal pace that you're allowed to do without the safety car in front of you, and gets back in the pit lane and comes back out in front. Bottas was so well timed that theoretically, without an interrupted lap by the safety car in front of him, he could have passed Hamilton due to what was going on, and just was badly caught off guard. I think that just shows that maybe there were some just difficult factors for him to deal with.
No, I mean, this sort of is a null point, sort of, in that when Bottas came into the pits, he was asking for a different compound to what Lewis Hamilton was going to receive. Didn't work out because Bottas came in first, so ultimately that strategy went out the window. But Harry, would you say this is encouraging that Bottas at least wants to try something different and try something to rock the boat?
Yeah, I really like that message from him. It shows, because we've, after a past couple of defeats at races, he seemed really down and disheartened, but he's obviously still got the fire within him to take the challenge. And like I said, I think they were pretty evenly matched on pace today, and he realised that. And having not got lost the lead, he needed to try something different. So yeah, that was kind of something I thought Rosberg would do, like do something different, like kind of try and mess with the strategy of Hamilton. And I liked it, and it was good to see that he was. He may well be saying that all the time, but we don't hear it. But it was just, it was nice to hear him, thinking on his feet and trying something different. And it was encouraging. I didn't see his reaction after the race, but I hope that continues, because we need him to keep challenging, because he is pushing Hamilton in qualifying and in today in the race. He is pushing him. He's just not quite there, and it must be so frustrating for him.
Were you as encouraged by that message, Sam?
Oh yeah, that was fantastic. That was racing sides. That was fighting talk. That was I need to beat Hamilton. I'm not going to beat him as we're doing this right now. That doesn't work around this track. So whatever Lewis is doing, give me the opposite, because I need to try something different. And he's thinking about it. He's strategically trying to plan out his race in order to get in front of Lewis Hamilton. And there are not many people on this planet that can currently beat Lewis Hamilton on an outright pace, lap for lap. So Bottas is looking at the other option. What can I do? More durability, longer lap life, maybe shorter lap life, but I can get in front of him and I can hold on to track position. He's thinking that as he's on the go, which is fantastic to see. Unfortunately, when you pair that with Bottas's current racecraft, it all unravels. It falls apart. Bottas doesn't have tyre wear capability at the moment. We've seen that throughout the whole season. Bottas's tyre wear is worse than Hamilton's, and it is shown time after time, and it makes Hamilton's life easy. Because Hamilton just has to wait for Bottas' tyres to fall off a cliff, a 6-second gap opens up, Bottas comes in that lap, Hamilton comes in the next lap, and then they come out the pit lane and Hamilton's got an 8-second gap to his teammate. No competition, no race needed, doesn't matter what you want to, Bottas, I'll just jump on it afterwards because I've got a big gap now. So Bottas needs to really complete the final aspects of his game before we can really see an absolute fight, a head-to-head between Lewis and Bottas, because, you can push someone in qualifying all you want, but the moment you get into that race, you can't finish a race as equally. Same with Charles Leclerc today. Had a great start to the race and 8 tyres up like it was nobody's business. You're not competitive. You're not able to take those extra points because you just can't manage it properly. So Bottas has still got a lot to work on, but it was a fantastic sign seeing him really go for fighting talk.
Yeah, and I think with Mercedes and the lay of the land at the moment, they've got more scope. Bottas has got more. He's got more scope to ask for these sorts of strategies that is going to mess with Lewis Hamilton. They just have fewer cars to contend with than in previous years. If you think back a few years, Mercedes had to be wary of essentially 4 drivers in Raikkonen, Vettel, Ricciardo, and Verstappen. And even last season, you would say Vettel, Leclerc, and Verstappen. This season, they only really have to contend with Max Verstappen in nearly every race. That's just how F1 has ended up to this point right now. So particularly when Verstappen is out of the race like he was today, it just gives Mercedes free rein to do whatever they want. And that gives Bottas free rein to try something different. And, it didn't work out, obviously, because Hamilton is very good at managing his tyres. I assume it was a mixture of Hamilton being very good at managing his tyres and Bottas being in that dirty air that, Bottas wanting to try something different kind of means that he has to pit second. And because he struggled so much, he had to pit first. But I found it encouraging as well. This is the type of thing he needs to try. He doesn't need to be worried about the cars behind that Mercedes. If he's worried about cars behind, he shouldn't be in that Mercedes because it's good enough that it should be 1-2 in every normal race. That's just how it is, especially when Verstappen isn't there. But you could even say when Verstappen is there, if you're not willing to risk something, if you're not willing to, give it a gamble, you're not going to beat Lewis Hamilton, quite simply. And we have seen so often that the leading Mercedes is the one that's going to go home and win the race. So if you're on the same strategy and that's not going to do anything, you might as well try something different. And when there are fewer other cars in the equation, that just helps Bottas's case to say to the engineers, why don't we try this? I'm going to finish second no matter what, so let's try it. Unfortunately, didn't come to fruition today. Wouldn't have mattered anyway. But it is encouraging that it seems as if he will try something in future races. Whether he does or not remains to be seen. Should we move on to driver of the day then? So, Harry, who have you got for this one?
Any of them that didn't crash. So,
all three of them.
I'm going to I'll go with the general public and go for Danny Rick. I think without that last red flag, he would have been P3. So Stroll couldn't get past him, so Stroll decides to just crash instead. So Danny Rick can't get it. No, I'm joking, Stroll fans. I'm going to go for Danny Rick. There's a fair few contenders out there actually, but I thought Ricciardo, in between him and Albon, I think he deserved that podium more. I'll give it to the old honey badger.
Sam, what do you reckon?
Honey badger's an absolutely great shout. The man was pulling punches left, right, and centre. I loved his fighting talk on the final restart. It's a shame it didn't come off the right way, but that kind of let's finish what we started. That's like you're expecting like a powerful montage to start with, some big music kicking off like a film was about to go. But, maybe they'll use that in Drive to Survive somewhere because that was an epic moment. It's a shame it didn't round off to be the way he wanted it to be. Gets past Bottas, great move. Really took it to the Mercedes. It was nice to see someone else taking it to the Mercedes. Perez also did a really good job despite having less updates on his car to Stroll. He was always there throughout the race. Lando Norris also drove really well. Kvyat kept it together nicely. I'm going to give it to Lewis Hamilton. He was under constant pressure, having to manage all those different restarts, beat the one person on the track he needs to be, and did so, coming out on top. But it's incredibly close. I love it when we end a race and I have about 6 names in my head that will drive the day, because that shows we've had a really strong race.
Yeah, absolutely. I could give driver of the day to Ferrari quite simply because apart from Mercedes, they were the only team to bring home 2 cars. I'm just kidding, of course. I'm going to go with Daniel Ricciardo. Excellent performance, and I agree. I think he would have got P3 if it wasn't for that red flag, because even though Albon was definitely on the move at that point, he did have the Lance Stroll protection sort of in P4. So I think the amount of time it would have taken and the amount of effort it would have taken out the tyres to get past Lance Stroll, which I think was on the cards for Albon, I don't think that would have left him with enough to get Ricciardo in the end. As it happens, even with that great start by Ricciardo, he did everything he could by getting past Valtteri Bottas into turn 1. Even so, there was no defence against Albon, and I don't think you can blame Daniel Ricciardo for giving up that P3. Still, though, 12 points, another solid performance from him. He's really showing what he can do. Will be very exciting if that McLaren is capable of regular podiums next season. Who knows on that respect? But yeah, good stuff from Danny Rick. I'm going to go with him. What about worst driver of the day, Harry?
I could go with all the drivers that didn't finish the race. I am going to give it to... I don't know. I think all of the ones that did finish don't deserve worst driver of the day because they finished. So let's give it to... I'll give it to Gasly. I think he was a bit ambitious on that first start. I think he could have backed out a bit sooner. But it was so chaotic. I feel harsh giving it to anyone, to be honest. But I'll go for P. Gasly, from hero to zero.
What about you, Sam?
Again, it's actually really difficult, especially when you only had 12 finishes, to pick someone that got to the end of the race and deserves to be called worst driver of the day. Maybe Grosjean, despite the fact that he was in the barrier at one point facing the wrong way in the gravel and still managed to be on the back of that safety car and then had to crawl his way through what looked like a recreation of some scene in World War II in front of him down that pit straight. Swearing at the camera was also an absolute highlight. You love to see that as well. Putting other people's lives at risk, moaning about that when he does it on a weekly basis is fantastic. But he was so much slower than everyone else for the whole race. He was never on the pace. He was never close enough to getting a move done. I feel if Magnussen had made it all the way through, then Magnussen might have even left him in the dust. That Haas car is atrocious. And even Russell, who fell all the way back down to last, ended up absolutely breezing past him within a few laps. It's a shameful, shameful thing they've got going on there at Haas, and they've somehow gone from being what was fighting to be the fourth best team in Formula One to possibly being the worst team we've seen in a little while since Williams were at their lowest level. And I think that drive might be gone. I think my drive might be gone for him next season. I think that we're going to see a new lineup there. So for me, Grosjean was worst driver of the day.
I mean, on Ferrari's 1000th race, do I dare pick a Ferrari driver?
Yes.
The answer's yes to that, by the way. I'm going to go with Sebastian Vettel. He was comfortably outpaced by Charles Leclerc. I mean, qualifying wasn't even close. Charles Leclerc managed to, and in fairness, this was more down to Charles Leclerc's greatness, what he was able to do to get that car to P5. Sebastian Vettel scrapes through Q1, knocked out comfortably in Q2. And I know Leclerc did drop throughout the field and didn't manage his tyres perfectly, but he was still way more competitive than Vettel was in the race. And I think Vettel was brought back into it somewhat due to those red flags. So I think it was a bit of a nothing race for him, really. He kept ahead of Grosjean and Russell. Given the fact that Ferrari was apparently good enough to be in Q3, I don't think staying ahead of Grosjean and Russell matters that much or really should amount to that much credit. So yeah, I'm going to go with Vettel.
And he couldn't even close the gap to Raikkonen. He had a 5-second penalty. He still finished behind Kimi in the same power unit in a car that's awful with a penalty.
Yeah, it's worrying.
Seb is absolutely checked out for the rest of this year, isn't he? Don't you think?
Yeah, contract signed. I'm on the beach, mate. In his head is pure Marbella.
Where's he going next year?
Don't know.
Oh, don't know. I haven't heard the news, mate.
I ain't got a clue. That does feel like about 1 billion years ago, by the way. It only
It does.
Yeah. Video up now to hear about our reactions if you're interested.
Nice.
Good plug. Nice one. Well done. 10 points to Sage. What about moments of the race? What have you got, Harry?
There's a fair few, but I'm going to go for the one that made me laugh a lot was when they were trying to lift the smouldering wreck of Lance Stroll's car
Oh God!
over the barrier, and there's just a lot of marshals yelling in Italian because it's still on fire up in the air, and it's complete pandemonium. There are a lot of good moments in that race, but that one made me fully laugh out loud. I was like, come on, guys.
Nice. What about you, Sam?
That looked like a scene out of Alien, didn't it? When they rip the insides are all coming out. No! And then you're like, don't look away, children. Don't look inside this pool with the fire extinguisher all over it. It looked like a living being had been torn open. It was horrible. That poor car. For me, I mean, it's hard to look away from Roman Grosjean just swearing heavily. Freaking idiots, I think he called them, on live camera in the pit lane, which of course was part of one of the most crazy crashes we've seen for a long time in Formula One. So that whole area, I think, of the red flag was what really turned it into an absolute spectacle of a race that had everything. So for me, it was that safety car restart with the crash, and then Grosjean just topping it off with absolutely screaming it.
I'm also going to go for a Roman Grosjean incident, but actually a different one. I thought his overtake around the outside of turn 2 was absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to go with that. However, I was very, very close to, again, picking something that actually happened outside of the race. But the national anthem at the start, I know there are going to be loads of nationalists coming after me as a Brit, but good God, please can we adopt their national anthem? It's so much better than ours. It's so much better. I thought that was awesome. But yeah, there's so many to choose from. You're right in saying that.